Well, welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of October 28th, 2024. Recommendations of the Planning Commission on certain items from this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting on November 6th, 2024, beginning at 10:30 a.m. The Planning Commission utilizes speaker request forms, which are available in the commission chambers during the meeting. If you would like to speak on an item and you're not the applicant, the forms are in the back of the room and you can bring them to Jerry. She'll give them to me. Okay, roll call.
Charlie?
Yes, I'm here.
Don't see. Gary?
Present.
Lori?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Karen?
Present. Since we have one of our members on Zoom, we will be doing roll call votes on the motions. That way we have a clear record of who voted and how they voted. So, has everyone reviewed the October 16th, 2024 minutes? If so, the chair would address a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 16th, 2024 meeting. Discussion from the audience? From the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Oh, that's right, sorry.
We'll just start in order. Charlie?
Charlie?
Move to approve.
Gary?
Gary?
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
I'll let you call.
Okay. Lori?
Yes.
Mike?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Karen?
Yes. Okay, motion carried. The chair would address, approval of the agenda. The chair would address the motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. Discussion from the audience? From the commission? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Charlie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye. Consent agenda. Brittany.
Point of order, just to help Brittany out before she goes. Item number 6, page 2, there's a clerical error. The word approval, to recommend approval of conditional, was missing, and Brittany will be reading it into the record, but I just wanted the record to show that. Thank you.
Right. Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any Planning Commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this Planning Commission on certain items from this agenda are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners, who will make the final decision. Item number 4 is conditional use permit review CUR 1226 for Mark and Mary Hansen to review a vacation home rental in a suburban residential district, and staff recommends approval. Item number 5 is conditional use permit review CUR 2140 for Rob Livingston, No Bad Days Campground, to review the rental of kayaks, paddleboards, and UTVs in a highway service district, and staff recommends approval. Item number 6 is conditional use permit amendment review CUR 2152 for Campfire Cabins LLC, Al Sutton, to review an existing conditional use permit to allow the existing caretaker manager's residence to be used as a vacation home rental in an agriculture district, and staff recommends approval. Item number 7 is conditional use permit review CUR 2168 for Delbert and Yvette Haskell to review an existing single-family residence to be used as a bed and breakfast in an agriculture district, and staff recommends to end conditional use permit with the applicant's concurrence. Item number 8 is minor plan unit development amendment review, PUR 1805 for Grant and Sandra Parsons, Plum Creek Homes, to review a bed and breakfast, and staff recommends approval. Item number 9 is Plan Unit Development Overlay Review PUR 22-08 for Black Hills Tiny Resort LLC, Jolene Zoller, to review a recreational resort to include a recreational vehicle park, vacation home rentals, and a caretaker manager's residence in a highway service district, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Would staff like any items removed from the consent agenda?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Would the planning commission like any items removed from the consent agenda? And would any audience members like any items removed from the consent agenda? Okay.
10 and 11.
They're not on the consent agenda. We're just doing, yeah, they're not included in the consent agenda. The chair would address a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Discussion from the audience? Okay, roll call vote.
Charlie,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Karen.
Aye. All right, we are to items 10 and 11. Should we perhaps combine them for discussion?
And vote on them separately, Madam Chair.
Is that your motion?
That would be my motion.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to discuss items 10 and 11 together, but they will be voted on separately. Discussion from the commission? Roll call vote.
Charlie,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Karen.
Aye. Okay. Go ahead, Brittany.
So items 10 and 11 are conditional use permits COCU 24-0022 and COCU 24-0023 for Yarrow Tech LLC. Mark Tippett is the agent and is to allow a utility-scale solar energy system in an agriculture district and to allow a utility-scale wind energy system in an agriculture district. And the applicants are here to do the presentation, and staff can answer any questions following that presentation. So I'll bring Mark Tippett.
Thank you. I'm Mark Tippett. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Yarrow Tech. Thank you very much for hearing us today. Is the space bar advancing the?
No, you'll have
Okay. So much of this presentation will be shorter than the last a couple because much of the information has been presented a number of times. The two areas that are new, and that will be kind of at the end of the slides, are discussion about the view of the project from various aspects, and then also a discussion about the projected tax revenue that was actually put together by Shannon Champion. Is she here? She had asked to explain it in much more detail. We're simply taking the numbers that she had given. So the Cheyenne River Ranch wind and solar project is located approximately 30 miles from Rapid City, about 3.5 to 4 miles north of Highway 44. And so this slide shows the proximity of the project to Rapid City and also to New Underwood. This slide shows the project location, the connection to the transmission line, which is a 230 kilovolt WAPA transmission line. That transmission line runs north to south and connects, the first substation that it connects to is the New Underwood substation. We have been in communication with WAPA from the very, potential beginning to the project. So we are working with their engineering team out of Billings, Montana. And the transmission line, the connectivity between the project and the transmission line could be underground or overground. That will be told to us. It's not our decision. The connection is following section line per the county policy on that. This slide on the left shows the parcels that are included in the project, and then they also show on the right, it's a little bit larger of a map, which shows the project in blue, but then the parcels that are directly connected to it, which would be the land owned by Seth Shorb and the land owned by Jerry Mader. And two of the four sides connect to another landowner, and two of the four sides are just additional land from the Cheyenne River Ranch landowner. This is a very kind of high-level view of the layout. In the yellow circles are the wind turbines, and the area in blue are the solar panels. And wanted to highlight again why we went with this approach. If the project were only a wind project, then it would be very similar in size to Willow Creek. Willow Creek has 38 wind turbines and is 127 megawatts nameplate capacity. Our project uses 10 turbines and is 142 megawatts nameplate capacity. So what we were trying to do, our approach was to minimize the amount of land that would be used for the project, anticipating that there might be some concerns about that. So this kind of hybrid format reduces the amount of acreage. The entire project is 1,000 acres. The acreage for the solar is a little over 330 acres. If we had done wind only, it would probably be somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 acres would be the entire span of the project. There is also a 1,000-foot buffer between the outermost generating unit, which would be the turbines, to the closest landowner parcel for the wind. And this again, this slide is highlighting the road access. So at mile marker 73 on Highway 40, there is a turnoff, and then you see the access road, which is a dirt road, that already exists on the land. I think the thing to highlight here is accessing the project from the highway. No other landowner's land needs to be crossed. It's all on the Cheyenne River Ranch land. And this, and then on the right is just a little bit of a super view, again, of just the, demonstrating that the land is, for the access, is owned by Cheyenne River Ranch. This is something that we were asked to put together after our last meeting. This is a three-dimensional view of the project. So this is all drawn to scale to the landscape. This is what it would look like from a drone, at 500 or 600 feet. And then the next slides are going to be views from three different aspects based on this three-dimensional model. This is hard to see, which is why we highlighted the part that we're focusing on in yellow. This is an almost accurate view of what the project would look like from the base of the access road off of Highway 44. The reason it's almost accurate is this is if you were on a ladder 50 feet high. If we go all the way down to street level, Google, which was the tool that, Google Earth, which was the tool to generate this, it reverts to video that is not, real-time video, or not video, but digital imagery. So it would be impossible to see the three-dimensional view. If we were down another 50 feet, probably the horizon line would cut at the hub access. So you would still see the tips of the wind turbines, but not much more than that. And the primary reason for that is the project sits on a bluff, which is about 300 feet elevation higher than Route 44 or New Underwood. So from Highway 44, you're essentially looking at an upward slope, and then once you get to the elevation of the project, then it's about another 3 miles in, which is why you can't see the solar panels. This is the view from 3.38 miles away if you were to draw a line from New Underwood to the project. This is the significance, the reason for the precise 3.38 miles is going from, there is a video which we've created for this. It's kind of a long one because what that video, which is available for people to see, probably just not very practical to do here. What that video is if there were a drone that starts in New Underwood and flies directly to the project at 5 or 10 feet off of the ground, it's not until you reach, it's 11 miles approximately from New Underwood to the project. It's not possible to see anything from the project until you hit this crest, which comes at 3.38 miles. Once you, so in other words, the video is just showing landscape that you're passing over until you get to the high point, which is 3.38 miles away. That's what the turbines would look like from that distance. And then obviously as you fly closer, they get larger. And the next slide is just kind of this is a map depiction from that point. At the bottom, the yellow line going from the bottom to the top at the project, that's 3.38 miles away. And you can see the land from that point at the bottom to the project is, flattens out quite a bit, which is why you can see the project from that point. And then finally, this is what the project would look like from I-90 at New Underwood. Again, this is a little bit, this is if you were to stand at 50 feet above the highway, which is the furthest down that we could get in order to capture this. At street level, again, they're tiny little tops of turbines, but at street level, you would see less of them. And then finally, in terms of new information, These are, this is the tax revenue estimated by the county. So again, these are estimated taxes. I think the county feels fairly confident in these because they use Willow Creek as a benchmark. So the nameplate capacity of the project annually is 168,000. The production tax, which is based on the actual amount of energy that the project produces, is a little over 86,000. And then the one that probably has the biggest estimation factor, the value of the land will increase significantly. The reason I was hoping that Shannon would be here to explain this is she made a point to us that this land value is going up because it's being taken out of the agricultural taxation. Surrounding land, which is not taken out of an agricultural status, would not go up. So the estimated annual tax is, we think that the 150 could actually go, to 200 or 250,000, but we just don't have that accurate estimate yet because it doesn't come from us. And the allocation, as far as we understand it, is 50% to the school, 35% to the county, and 15% to the township. The only thing that is on this timeline, number 4, interconnection study, this is something that we thought would start earlier because we just weren't sure what to estimate for this process, the conditional use permit process. We are still hopefully on, depending on what happens, quite frankly, today, that interconnection study with Southwest Power Pool could still start at the end of this year. So the 2024 would be accurate, but the end of that interconnection study could actually go out to 2027. The rest of this, we think that we could still, kind of maintain the rest of the project timeline. And that's all the new information that we wanted to present. We knew that there had been a lot of discussion about the views of the project and what would be seen and where it could be seen from, and if we could have some bookmark locations, some anchor locations that we would reference. Hopefully we gave a little bit of an idea on that, and then something that we had never discussed before, which is the revenue for the county. So with that.
Do we have questions for Mark?
I would have one. The road that we went in on, will this be improved?
Our goal is that it would not be improved. We don't want to. There will be after the project is constructed. There's always going to be need for accessing for maintenance, but that will require vehicles that are pickup truck type vehicles, and bringing the equipment in for construction. These are all of the components for the project are broken down into fairly small containers, flatbed. The largest two items would be the blades, which they're very long, but they don't weigh very much, and the wind turbine nacelle. We we don't want to improve it, but the answer to that really starts with the engineering firm and the construction firm and their analysis of the road and the loads. The reason that we don't want to improve it is the maximum requirement of that access road is going to be during construction. And what I'm saying about the access road also applies to the rest of the project. For example, we don't have concrete foundations for the solar panels. We're not doing what some developers do, which is cover the area with gravel, to keep grass from growing. So we prefer to do as little that needs to be undone as possible. If it were improved, then we would kind of remove that when needed, but certainly not expected to do asphalt. The big question is, what time of year does the construction happen, and what is that soil like, if with moisture, and then the loads that have to come in.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mike, page 2 of 9, condition 19 would require that access road be improved to, I believe it's the 14 standards. Yeah, ordinance 14 standard. So, per se, that's not paving, but it's still, there's going to be an improvement in regards to drainage and the traveling surface to a certain width for the construction, during construction.
Right.
And then that's left, that is not taken up, so.
Okay.
At this point, it is in the requirements from the staff recommendation. Just a point,
Yeah, good.
thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Lori. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Related to the project life, I think that I've seen various numbers, 35, 40 years is the estimated project life. Is that correct?
To me, yes, ma'am. The initial term is 25 years, and then there are the potential of two 10-year extensions. So certainly the life of the equipment is initially 25 years and is what I think questions that a lot of people have about the length of the use of the equipment. It's not like equipment is put in and 25 years later, we come to check on it and see what still works. When panels, if panels fail either on their own or they get degraded beyond a certain point, they're replaced. Parts on the wind turbine are constantly maintained, and so it's not like the wind turbines or the solar panels are 25 years old from the first day. It's just a lot of it has to do with, a lot of it at that point will have to do with the technology at that point.
My question, I guess, is with technological advances and, replacement of equipment and maintenance of equipment, couldn't the project life be more than 40 years?
It could be, yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have I know it's hard to tell the future, but do you have an estimate on what the max project life might be?
If you look back in time, there have been significant technological advances in wind and solar over the past 10 to 15 years. Much of where we started 15 years ago to where we are today, there may have been a 3 or 4 times improvement from an efficiency perspective. Those two technologies, from a physics perspective, are getting pretty close to we would not expect from a physics perspective for there to be the same kind of improvement over the next, 20 or 30 years. So I think, I think 30 to 40 years is probably pretty realistic.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Charlie?
I should have included too that especially for the applicant, but for the audience, the road requirements would be addressed during the building permit process, which according to his timeline is somewhat down the road. So if I was a neighbor, I wouldn't expect this to be one of the first things done. I just wanted to point that out. It's addressed during the building permit process, that road requirement comes into effect, and the applicant would be required to meet that condition. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the commission? I have a question. You mentioned that there would be a staging area close to Highway 44 for trucks, in case they get.
Staging.
Would there be a staging area up by the site also then?
It could be in either location, and there's no reason, there is so much land available that maybe the better area for the staging area is up at the project site. We know from past meetings and conversations that there were a lot of mistakes made and concerns about what happens coming on and off the highway. And so there are a lot of projects where there's just not really the opportunity, to have a staging area very far off of public access. In our case, there is a great opportunity to do that. So I think based on your question, the more logical place for us to have a staging area is out of sight.
Okay.
Yeah, so we could absolutely put the staging area on top of the bluff, so that there's not 10 acres that just have lots of stored equipment until it needs to get installed.
Okay. Are there other questions from the commission? What I would like to do, and for the sake of expediency, would be to have the commission make a motion, and we'll get it seconded, but we will not vote on it, but then we would open it up for discussion of all the people that have requested to speak. And that way we can avoid repetition to a certain extent, so.
Madam Chair,
Do you want me to
Yes.
sit down?
do you want two motions for approval? I mean, two motions for the COCUs?
Madam Chair, point of order, they have to be done separately.
They have to be done separately, so do we?
Okay,
we-
I'll make a motion for approval of COCU 24-0022 with 28 conditions.
I'd second that.
Okay, it's been
And
moved
then
and
go
and
ahead.
seconded, and now we're going to be open for discussion on this particular item.
I agree with you. I think we don't need a lot of repetition. We should allow our audience members, and certainly if the applicant is requested to answer a thing, that we're not repeatedly doing this. I agree with the chair.
And just to let you know, we can change our minds on our motion. We can do substitute motions or withdraw motions, so.
Yes.
Nothing is set in stone, but the first speaking request we have is for Jerry Deere. Oh, did I pronounce his name right?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you can see you have a room full of people, most in opposition to this project, two projects, I guess, if you want to split it. And so, a lot of it's going to be stuff you've heard before. We've been up here a few times to talk about this. I think a couple things to point out would just go back to what I said at the last time that I spoke when this was up. And it goes back to Pennington County's comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan speaks to site location and appropriateness. And what you will hear, forget what Google Earth says, or if it's 50 feet view, or if you're 11 miles away from this, it's not site appropriate to our community. And so it's an agricultural district, and you're getting a conditional use permit. because you're asking for the opportunity basically to rezone in an agricultural district. And so, the zoning law, that's why we have this permitting process, allows for this permit to go through and be presented publicly through this process. And some of the comments I heard last time, you asked for a legal opinion, I'm assuming you've gotten one back, as to whether or not you had the authority to deny this permit. And I would challenge you, if you say that, I can't deny these permits and these applications because we may get sued, then why is there a process to come in front of the board? And why isn't it just the planning department that can go ahead and issue this authorization and permit? It's because it requires a process. And so I think the process at the onset was flawed, as I mentioned before. And I understand that you're operating off current ordinances that we have in the zoning ordinance. But it goes back to the point that there is no moratorium on the number of conditional use permits that could be issued for this type of project. And I think that that is wrong at the fact that we have regulations on alcohol permits, the marijuana permits. All of those have a number associated with them and the ability to deny based on certain criteria. And so I would challenge you as a board that is representing, the citizenry of Pennington County, and in this case, it happens to be in a district that I will represent as a commissioner come January. And so you have people living in the community appealing to you as their local representatives, and they would like to have a voice. And that voice says, we don't agree with the zoning of an agricultural district that would change the use and intent of the properties of which we operate and live in, and promote something that is different and changes the scope. So you can go in and you can look at and say, 11 miles away, if you're 50 feet above I-90, here's what the view is going to be. And what was left out of that presentation is the impact of the people that live and have built a life surrounding this location. It's not the current landowner that is saying that I would like Yarrowtech to come in and change the use of this property. That landowner is an out-of-state landowner. Yarrowtech has no commitments to our community. They're an out-of-state company. And so we have individuals coming in from out of state, unfortunately, using a process that we have put in place through our zoning and ordinances, and saying that you can come in from out of state, you have no commitment, and you can change the scope and the life of the people that have lived here for a century. And so when I come on the commission in January, there are things in this permitting process that will require commission approval. And you are correct about improvement, of a road to meet county ordinance, putting utilities in a county right-of-way. There are certain aspects of this permitting process in the timeline that will go in front of the Board of County Commissioners. And when I take office in January, I'm going to oppose every opportunity I can of anything being permitted by the county commission and the county moving forward. I'm listening to the people in the district that I represent, and I'm listening to my family members. I live, and so if you want to know my view from my place a few miles away, I will be able to see this. And New Underwood, unfortunately, if they were to look south, depending on the time of day, if they were to look to the southeast, they wouldn't be able to see it because they're blinded by the solar panels that surround New Underwood to the east, to the south, and to the west. And so that is a project, that kind of slipped by a lot of us when that project went in. And, we're talking about the lifespan of a project that we have no experience dealing with in Pennington County. And so the question, it was a good question, what is the lifespan of the project? Could be 40 years, okay? And so the one in New Underwood, I think, is a test case to see how that goes, but I would not like to see any other projects. In fact, I believe that the zoning in an agricultural district that would allow this, that's one thing that should be changed, so we can put a moratorium and look at the numbers of how many could be permitted. But I don't believe that, changing the scope and the use of the Rolling Hills and Agricultural District of Eastern Pennington County is something that's supported by the people that live out there. And, we get the whole thing about land use, but this is, something that would totally change the scope and the use of the property that, many of these individuals here in this room have homesteaded. So you're going to listen to, a lot of the same information you've heard before, but I would challenge you as a local board, listening to the people that we're representing, and the people are telling you they don't want this, and if you don't have the ability to deny, then I would say, why was there a permitting process to begin with? And so I know in the back of the mind, because I've been involved in different things like this, it's always, I don't think that we have a choice. I don't think that we can deny this. And I'm not sure what advice your state's attorney's office has given you, but I would challenge you to go back to the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan and focus on the comprehensive plan where it talks about site location and site appropriateness, and you're going to hear everybody come up and tell you why this is not site appropriate, and I would say utilize the comprehensive plan to make this denial. Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out how to word this, Jerry,
Okay.
so that I know exactly what you're telling me. The zoning process puts the land at agriculture. The comprehensive puts it at agriculture. Is your question on the zoning process or the conditional use process?
No, it's not a question. It's so the zoning.
The application of
Yeah,
it.
the zoning ordinance right now, the way it is set, allows for this conditional use permit in an agricultural district. And I'm stating that the zoning ordinance needs to be changed that does not allow this. Secondly, the fact that it is allowed and it's going through this conditional use process, that the comprehensive plan speaks to site location and site appropriateness. And so even though there's a process that allows this permitting, there is also in the county's comprehensive plan, which is really, kind of your underlying document as to, going back to your ordinances and those types of things. And again, even the county comprehensive plan is, needing work. It looks like it was written by the individuals that wrote the Green New Deal. There are so many things in the comprehensive plan that we speak about doing, and again, green energy, this type of thing, and none of it is anything the county could afford to do. So another thing I'll look at when I come on board, and I know it gets reviewed, is the actual comprehensive plan. So it's the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and looking at this process for conditional uses in an agricultural district. So
if someone came forward in the future, they'd either have to change the zoning process or you would have dropped that as a allowable conditional use permit?
yeah,
That's what
I'm looking at leading a change in the zoning ordinance that would even allow this process in an agricultural district for this
Okay.
type of land use.
That was mine.
And secondarily, what I'm saying is, I would look at the comprehensive plan, because I believe the comprehensive plan as it's written today gives you the opportunity to deny this permit, because you're gonna hear everybody say that this is not something we want in our community, and we don't believe it's site location, we don't like the location of it. And so, there's a lot of things to look at, and, but I do believe if you were to listen to the people, you have a foothold to deny this application both.
Gary, did you have a question?
I do. So, Jerry, what I'm hearing you say is that the opposition is for the whole project, not one or the other, but the whole project as a whole.
Whole project, both permits.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, could I ask you to put up the criteria reviewed? Just so the audience has that information. Okay, next I have Jerry Mader. Jerry?
Yeah, he's right there.
Excuse me. Hello, I'm Jerry Mater. I'm a neighboring rancher that adjoins this project that's proposed. And I guess I have a few reasons why I would like to, I guess, protest or object to some of these. In the design plan that Brittany's bringing up here, page 3 of 9, the criteria number 2, the project should not negatively affect adjoining land. And I know that my daughter wants to move back onto the ranch and build a home at some point in the near future. And we feel like the land that's right close by this project would probably be not very practical to build a home because of the turbines and the traffic and just the glare of the solar panels, I guess, would be another concern. So either one of the projects I am opposed to. So I guess that would be a pretty big issue for us. And then, of course, the cattle that we have next door, we hear that the wind turbines affect them in a pretty large way. And I know they have a 1,000-foot setback. And if it does go forward, I'd like to at least ask for a 1,500-foot setback because that's what they consider as a little bit safer. If it's not there at all, would be my preference. But and as Jerry referred to, this is ag land and not industrial land, and it's been that way, of course, forever, or, well, for a couple hundred years, I guess, or so. But, so we, of course, like to keep it that way, and we don't want to look at these things for one thing, and I know that's maybe not a real strong reason, but the negative effects for health of livestock and people are a pretty big issue. So I'm very concerned for the noise and the vibration. And the loss of ag land, I guess that's another pretty big item. It seemed like a lot of these projects, especially the solar panels, cover a lot of acres and take that out of production, out of food production, which they're concerned. The big people are pretty concerned about land or running out of food. And to cover these up with, it seems like a green energy, but it's taking away green food from the population. There's also 400 counties, I think, across the nation that have ruled against any of these kinds of projects for those reasons that I have already mentioned. And I guess another thing that concerns me too, and this probably refers to the decommissioning, the project by New Underwood called Wild Springs, I believe, they rent the land, and I understand it's $350 an acre, which this could be different on this project, I don't know. But they'll do that for 20 years, which is a total cost of $7,000 an acre. And most land, I think you could buy for under $2,000 an acre. So my big concern about this, why these people don't want to own it, is because it lets them off the liability end. If they get a bad storm and they don't want to fix it up or clean it up, they can just walk away and leave it stuck with the landowners. I don't know if that's accurate, but it seemed like it could be. I mean, most people would rather own than rent, so that's a pretty big concern for me, that they just rent it, and then if something big happens and they have a big disaster, they can just walk away. And I guess the cosmetic part of it, which Jerry kind of referred to too, but the Highway 44 and Interstate 90 are both gateway to the Badlands and to the Black Hills, depending on which way you're going. And these things will be, as Mark demonstrated on his view, they'll be visible from Interstate and 44. And people come to western South Dakota and the Black Hills and the Badlands for the view, and they'll have to see this. They won't be able to miss this view on the way to and from. It's if the towers stick up 200 or 300 feet, it'll be visible from both roads. And no way to get away from that, I don't think. So, and I guess it seems to me like with the billions of dollars that are being thrown at this from the government, it seemed like this is just the beginning of the onslaught of many of these projects to come. And I guess I'd like to get it stopped right here if we can, before they cover up our beautiful grasslands and Black Hills with tall projects or big spread out projects like this. So I would ask you to please vote no on both of these projects, please. Thank you.
Are there questions for Jerry? I have one. How many acres is your ranch?
We have about 11,000 acres
Okay.
of deeded ground and then some leased ground too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Kirsten Mitzel?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Go ahead and introduce yourself again, just.
Yes, my name is Kirsten Mitzel. I was born and raised here in Rapid City, and I recently moved to New Underwood. I did so because I love the open prairie, the beautiful landscape, and the fact that there's a lot less people and a lot more livestock. I moved for that visual landscape. I did not move to see a sea of solar panels and wind turbines. I know that it's hard to see from the roads and it won't affect anybody unless you're over in the area. And, you know, all of the things that we've heard today from Yarrow Tech. But what I'm concerned about is the permanent and temporary loss of use of land. Agricultural land is at a commodity right now. We need to have local growers and ranchers to be able to provide food for our community. As we see supply chain breakdown across the country as well as internationally, there is that concern as well for me personally, that I would like to know where my food came from and that it was able to be produced locally. These solar and wind farms create all kinds of issues with environmental factors as well. So there are some concerns with wildlife, specifically endangered species. When it comes to the wind turbines, it affects migratory patterns. It also causes issues with the landscape as far as their areas where they would originate from and then where they would migrate to. Some that I researched and of note are the northern long-eared bat, the American dipper, the osprey, the peregrine falcon, and the whooping crane. Those are all a concern. The other thing that's a concern as well is the heat island effect. So when it comes to solar panels, they do increase the heat on the ground level in the area that the solar panels have been installed. This causes a huge issue in a multitude of areas, not only the microbiome of the land itself, which takes decades to restore, but also the fact that it creates additional heat in the area. So it can create issues with weather patterns. It can increase storm volatility, concerns there. And this heat island effect is something that we already see inside cities. We have a huge area downtown full of flat-roofed buildings that I think would be a fantastic spot for some solar panels. That heat island effect is already in place. We have already damaged and ruined the land for all intents and purposes permanently. And so I think that would be a much better use of the solar energy, and we can find somewhere else to put some wind turbines. But yeah, I guess those are just my concerns. As someone that's new to New Underwood, I was hoping to not have to deal with this. I was hoping that some of that would be left in the Rapid City metro area, and unfortunately, I'm seeing that that is not the case. And I will continue to fight as a new resident and protect the land that I now own. Thank you.
Are there questions for Kirsten? Any questions? Okay, thank you. Eileen Peterson?
I'm Eileen Peterson, and I have a rather extensive presentation that we might want to move to the end because I suspect other people will be addressing some of these same things, and maybe I won't have to go into.
Okay, we
so
can
much
move you to the end.
I will be addressing the county comprehensive plan and all 7 of the criteria in my presentation.
Okay,
So
okay. If you want to take a seat, we'll,
move me back.
I'll put you back at the end of the stack. Justin Urig?
Good morning. My name's Justin Urig. I live pretty close to the proximity of where this site's going to be developed. Been up here a few times before. You've heard some of the things that I'm concerned about. In relation, it's been mentioned a number of times that the Cheyenne River Ranch is 20,000 acres. Just as point of clarity, it is not. There was like 35 or 3,700 acres that were sold off that place. It's not necessarily a major conversation piece, but that ranch is actually closer to 17,000, not 20,000 as reported previously. As far as not approving this, you guys have plenty of grounds not to approve it on. One is off of that list. It is also off your comprehensive plan. Going back to your comprehensive plan, under Ag 1-1, one of the comments that is made there, the county should maintain agriculture as a primary land use in Eastern Plains focused area of the county, not only in recognition of the economic importance of agriculture, but also in terms of agriculture's real contribution to the conservation, the county's heritage, open space, and natural resources. Also, under Ag 2-2, AG, I guess I should say, the county should consider the placement of agriculture-related future developments such as residential, commercial, and industrial during the development review process to ensure that agriculture areas do not become fragmented. That is exactly what's happening if you continue to approve these, is we're starting to get agriculture fragmented in that area. You see all the subdivisions that are around New Underwood, plus the solar panels that are existing now, and now this proposed one. I'm assuring you that we do not want this as neighbors, and that goes to number 2, under the criteria of the checklist that is up here. Will the establishment, maintainer, or operation of the conditional use in any foreseeable manner substantially impair or diminish the uses, values, or enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood for purposes already permitted? And I'm here to tell you that everyone in this room is going to say, yes, this does impact us, and that box should not be checked the way it is. Just based on this criteria alone, you guys could not approve this project at this point. I was on my way to Rapid City on Sunday to prig check some cows, and I noticed a guy pulled over on Highway 44, and he was taking a picture, and I was trying to look and see what he was taking a picture of. And as you can imagine, Rapid Creek right now is laced with a lot of fall colors, and he was trying to capture the Black Hills and Rapid Creek in the same picture. In his view shed, there was no other impairments in front of it, and that is something that western South Dakota is known for, is the beauty of the Black Hills, and that is why people are drawn to this area, and we're asking you to allow us to continue to keep these obstructions out of our area to enable us to continue to do agriculture the way we've been doing it in the heritage and the heritage aspect that we have for many generations. I had one other thing. Also under safety, I'm curious if the commissioners have reviewed safety concerns, whether it's related to noise impacts of these turbines. As Mr. Mader mentioned, there is a number of counties across the United States and even some states that have banned these projects to extensive measures because of the impacts of safety and the concerns, and because those residences don't want them. Many of the counties have restrictions on decibel levels for what they measure at the property boundaries, and they will now allow projects that are going to have decibel levels over a certain level to come into place within their counties because of concerns, which is from the turbines, the noise that they are going to generate. I'm also curious if the commission's done the job to check the due diligence on the effect of conception rates on cattle, because many of these neighbors around me run cattle that'll be in close proximity to these. There is a lot of concerns, whether it's safety, whether it's the welfare of the people around us, or the enjoyment of our properties that are established here at this time. There's a number of reasons to check no on this, and that's why I'm not in favor of either one of these, and I'm asking you as commissioners to vote no on both of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Justin?
Thank you.
Thanks. Seth Shorb?
Good morning, I'm Seth Shorb. I'm neighboring ranch to the proposed area. I guess a few of the concerns I have for the proposed is just the drainage of the location. On my property, I have several dams that are downhill from the solar panels, so just concern of the drainage going into water supply for my cattle. I guess I haven't heard any talk about liability of the property fence in between there, whether or not if my cattle will get in the solar panels and like rub on the panels, if I'd be liable for any damage or vice versa. And I guess just fire damage from the increased infrastructure of the area, I feel like them are negative impacts to the area. That's all I have to say.
Questions for Seth?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Seth, when we were out there and we spoke, you gave me some background on the grassland.
Yes.
Could you just
So-
enlighten the other board members?
Yes, I mean, this grassland, this area has been developed. I mean, when you's out there, you could see the crested grass. And we're kind of in a drought and it is still a few feet high. I mean, the natural grass, native grass in the area, I mean, right now it ain't 4 inches tall because of the drought. But with the improvements of this land over, development of 50 years, I mean, you're kind of taking that away in just the instance of improvement for agriculture of the area.
That the development of grassland is
Yes.
a long, drawn-out process.
Yes. I
Certainly
mean,
longer than 10 years.
yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Betty Kineski?
I'm Betty Kineski, and good morning, and thank you for hearing us. Like I said before, the fire danger, you were out there and you've seen what will happen if they start a fire with their solar panels or their wind turbines. And did you go in from Highway 44 where that abutment, I would like to know? Are they going to have to get permission from the state? You know they can't take trucks around that road off the highway the way it is. There's going to have to be something done there. And as their view, they said, was from the bottom of the hill. You could see my house from where the corner was up there. And I will guarantee that will really show up when you're up on top of the hill, not down to the bottom of the hill. And the wind farms, they aren't farms, they're industrial electric generating facilities. They don't store energy, they're an intermittent source of energy, and they have to shut down the existing ones when they have to buy the power from them. And they're going to look like rotating skyscrapers when people see them from the highway. And they've already talked about the vibrations from them. And we have to ask ourselves what we want our county to look like. It's agriculture and tourism are number 1 and 2. I've been a taxpayer in this county since '73. And I've come from generations of people that have farmed, and how much land can we take out of production? But a lot of this energy is not going to be used here. It's going to be transmission lines out of state. And how are they going to hook into the other? Is there going to be another substation over? What lucky landowner is going to have that on his land? That's all I have to say today, and I would respectfully ask you to vote no on both projects. Thank you.
Other questions for Betty? No?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Florence Thompson?
Thank you. My name is Florence Thompson. I live at Caputa, South Dakota. I'm a small rancher and property owner, and I'm representing South Dakota Citizens for Liberty. I'm a lobbyist for them as well as a board member, a volunteer lobbyist, I might say. I will only make one point this morning. I'll be very brief. I ask this board to please defer approval of both 10 and 11. And the reason I'm asking for a deferral is because I believe there's a very strong possibility, depending on the results of our national election, that all of these programs could be scrapped, and in very short order. I think it's very imprudent for the Pennington County to go ahead with one of these long-term projects when the long-term view of it may not be feasible. So I think it would be prudent to wait for a few months and see what develops before you know whether these projects are really going to be viable in the future. So I would ask you to defer this vote on both 10 and 11. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay Mader.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Mader. First off, I would like to thank the commission for listening to us today in the last few months. My biggest concern about this project is the environmental impacts and the decommissioning of the project once it's to be removed. Our grasslands are the most endangered ecosystem in the world, even more so than rainforests. Grasslands are just as important as woody forests as they turn carbon dioxide into oxygen as well. Healthy soil directly impacts animal and human health by providing essential nutrients through the plants we eat, filtering water to remove contaminants, supporting diverse microbial communities that produce beneficial compounds, and regulating the cycling of nutrients vital for life. The 5 principles of soil health are limited disturbance, plant diversity, integrating livestock, soil cover, and living roots. The project construction will cause extreme soil disturbance leading to wind and water erosion, compaction, and plant degradation. Once constructed, plant life will decline due to inadequate sun and moisture. The natural process of photosynthesis is shot at this point. No livestock will be integrated to naturally fertilize, and living roots will get shorter and start to decay. The soil will be covered. However, the panels radiate 70 to 105 degrees higher off of them, and that will dry the soil out. Not only will it dry the soil out under the panels, the wind turbines will blow the heat for miles, causing drought conditions for the surrounding ranchers and farmers. Did you know that a 1% increase in soil organic matter in the cropland west of the Missouri River in South Dakota would hold enough water to supply Rapid City for 35 years, according to the USDA in South Dakota? That's a pretty substantial amount of water. I've seen different soil layers in a live pit before caused by different management types. This type of management will leave an everlasting mark on the land. Along with the damage it'll cause on our grasslands, it will directly impact our wildlife. As stated before by Casey Canopy, who's seen it firsthand from Wild Springs Project, it affects the natural migration patterns of deer, antelope, elk, etc. Throwing wind towers in the mix will affect the migration patterns of birds as well. There will be a loss of food, shelter, and even sacred drumming grounds for grouse as the previous listed wildlife. All of these animals play a vital part in our ecosystem. Next, I want to talk about the decommissioning of solar and wind plants. Along with there being issues with infrastructure enhancements to haul all of the material in and out of the project, and the inability to recycle the majority of the project materials, let's talk more about restoring the land to its natural state. Current data shows that less than 10% of land used for solar panels is actually restored by the companies that built them. My assumption, along with my father's, is that is why they lease the land and don't buy it. The company could buy the land for cheaper than what they lease it for, but they don't want to be responsible for the cleanup. According to our SDSU Extension Range Field Specialist Pete Bauman, a temporary road or corridor manipulates the soil results in permanent ecological impact. It is important to completely restore surface and subsurface native systems to pre-disturbance condition. He also stated that avoidance of disturbance is the only assurance to keep native ecosystems intact. Landowners wishing to return their property and vegetation community to original condition after energy development must first understand that once heavily disturbed, returning to 100% original is not realistic and it cannot be achieved. This is our legacy, our heritage, our livelihood, and our future. We were put here to be the stewards and caregivers of the land. Ask yourself, is green grass or industrialization better for the planet in South Dakota? Lastly, I want to remind everyone that local government was put into place to be the primary voice and protector of the local taxpayers. Local government is supposed to help protect the people from state and federal government overreach. Let's be honest, we wouldn't be in this position today if the federal government wasn't throwing out high tax credit incentives. You have one taxpayer saying no and hundreds saying, or one taxpayer saying yes and hundreds saying no. Let's restore the faith of taxpayers in our local government and set a precedence for the rest of the state by denying both conditional use permits.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Lindsay? Are there other comments are there folks that did not submit a request form?
I just have a quick question.
Come up, please.
My name's Christy. I just want.
Christy?
Yes,
What's your last name?
Scorsa.
Okay.
I know that they're required to get migration pattern. You guys have that paperwork? I don't think anybody's gotten a copy of it.
No, those environmental studies don't happen at this stage.
Okay.
They happen, yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to
There's
ask.
a much more detailed state level permitting and approval process
Okay.
covering things like stormwater runoff. Where it's not just what we say.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Why don't you come up to the
Sorry.
microphone?
Yeah. So I'll just use this to answer your question, then maybe touch on a few more.
Mark, yeah, you need to be by that so that the Zoom person can hear your
Oh, sorry,
testimony.
okay.
Thank you.
So conditional use permitting is stage 0 or step 1. There are all of the ordinance requirements that we are required to meet for local permitting and approval, just of the conditional use permit. But then beyond that, there are many environmental studies that need to be done, which impact things like migratory birds and endangered species. Probably one of the biggest ones is what happens with stormwater runoff. And we don't get to proceed just because of what we present. We're only allowed to proceed if our engineering plan meets the state regulations. Regarding cattle, bumping into solar panels, the solar panels will be surrounded by an 8-foot fence. Regarding fire, there is a fire protection program, or sorry, fire protection permit that we're required to get. There are, we understand concerns about fires on the plains and how quickly they could spread, and so the fire protection program addresses that. And then regarding decommissioning, we are required at the state level, and we also have, in our land lease, we are legally and financially liable for decommissioning. And so we have to post a very expensive decommissioning bond. And that decommissioning bond is not approved by us. It's granted by the decommissioning bond grantor, and all of the requirements to meet that bond are reviewed every 5 years. So if, say, 5 years into the project, it seems like for, whatever reason, the decommissioning process is more expensive, then we have to meet a higher bond requirement. So even if anything happened to Yarrow Tech, The decommissioning bond is essentially an insurance policy that covers that. It's funded in advance. So and then last but not least is purchasing the land versus leasing it.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Madam
sorry.
Chair.
Charlie?
This is her, and we're not answering
Oh, okay,
her
yeah,
question,
sorry.
Mark.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no question I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to take.
no.
You certainly have a right to come back up. This just
Okay,
isn't the
thank
time.
you, thank you.
Sorry.
That was the only question I had.
Thank
I
you.
got
I
it
did
answered.
Madam Chair?
sufficiently answer
Yep.
for you? Thank you.
Yep.
Well, it's,
Madam Chair,
Yes?
can I ask a question about environmental impacts?
to Mark?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, you probably can't see it, but I kind of chased him off there because he was getting off
Well,
the
yeah,
question. So we
I
need
heard
you
it,
back
but-
up.
but
Okay,
Christie was concerned about environmental impacts.
Right.
We discussed the county requirements and the state requirements, and I just wanted to know if there are any additional federal requirements that are not delegated to the state.
The majority of environmental requirements are state and federal level, and they are significant. So,
Okay.
these are not studies that we're able to do. We are required to engage environmental engineering firms to do, and in many cases, part of the study ironically asked for us to prove that an endangered species is not there. So not only do we have to show that there's not an impact to that, but we have to prove that it's not there. So there
And
are.
since this, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And since this is an energy project, are there any Federal Energy Regulatory Commission FERC requirements that you're required to meet or address with them?
Yes, and what the one thing that we're still waiting an answer on is how locally we're going to be regulated, whether it's according to state level regulation for projects that are over 100 megawatts or under 100 megawatts. That ball is in that organization's hands. We haven't gotten an answer back. We don't fight back either way. All we want to know is just what rule book we're being asked to follow.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam
Eileen
Chair.
Peterson?
I am Eileen Peterson.
Eileen, could you pull the microphone down closer?
Okay, thank you. I do have copies of my presentation for each of the members. Should I give them to them now or wait till after the presentation? I don't want to distract them unduly by giving them to them in advance, but
No, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't hear anyone else bring this up, so I'll bring it up before I start my presentation. The conditional land use permit application. Appears to me that the name of the landowner is wrong and then the signature of that landowner is wrong. Is this a valid application? My understanding, landowner's name is not Adam Henry, it's Adam Hendry.
That's a question for Brittany.
I'll have to do some research on it.
The landowner's signature isn't on their application form.
Oh, my signature doesn't look like I match every letter either, but.
But the printed typed out, it should be.
But it's notarized by the person that says that that's them, so it's the notary. He appeared in front of a notary. If it's, well, if the notary had his name in front of him.
Is Harvey here today?
Could you come back to the microphone, please?
I thought if the land manager was here, perhaps he could clear up what the name of the landowner actually is. If it is not, what's on that permit? I'll start my plan presentation now. I'm going to read most of it because I don't know that once this gets into that 600-page meeting packet, if anybody ever actually could wade their way through that. So I'm presenting you all with a copy of it. I'm going to start my comments by addressing what I believe are the ways these two projects do not comply with the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan, nor the county zoning requirements. I tried to keep my comments based solely on scientific and engineering considerations, but that's not really possible when considering adverse effects from the proposed projects on scarce native prairie grasslands. 7 generations of my family have been among the land caretakers in Pennington County since 1886. This is not throwaway land to us. Pennington County Comprehensive Plan view to the 2040 goal, LUH 6 as new developments in Pennington County is designated to enhance protection of the area's natural beauty. Item LUH 6.4, the county should consider the protection of scenic resources as part of the project review. There may be many people who do not consider native grasslands as scenic, but I'm not one of them, and more than 300 other local residents have also voiced their opposition to the disruption of our prairies by something that is decidedly not scenic. And that petition is included in the September 9th, 2024 meeting packet. Goal LUH-8, county encourages energy conservation in new and existing developments. And item LUH 8.3, the county should support efforts when appropriately cited for the development and use of alternative energy sources. The proposed projects would be in the shortgrass prairie of this county. Of the original shortgrass prairies in North and South Dakota, only 1% still exist as native prairie. That is areas where the sod has never been broken. How can proposed projects be more important than preserving their native prairie? Land can never be restored to its unbroken condition. According to the South Dakota Public Utilities Commission, South Dakota already produces twice as much electricity as it uses. The entire western half of the state uses less electricity than the Sioux Falls metropolitan area does. The problem is reliable, dispatchable energy. We don't need more non-dispensable energy, which is what wind and solar are. And that is reliant on weather. Although the comprehensive plan supports alternative energy when appropriately cited, there's no indication how much land disturbance is enough. How much is too much? How close should these facilities be allowed to towns, rural homes, or other similar facilities? They probably should be considerably more than a half mile. If these projects are approved, where will it stop? What basis does the county have for saying no to future projects if they have no guidelines for limiting it? If the half mile mentioned in some documents is the only spatial limit, how does agriculture survive in that environment? Agriculture is the second largest economic driver in South Dakota. How does it not have land use preference over alternative energy? South Dakota prairies are not just handy places for putting utilities in industrial sites, so they will be out of sight of more influential people who do not want these industrial sites in their backyards, but are glad to have the benefits of them being in somebody else's backyard. Our prairies are a source of not only beauty and pride, but of economic survival for the people who live on them and who appreciate the value they have as grasslands. Not everything has to be dug up or paved over to have lasting value. Zoning ordinances. These are from the Pennington County, South Dakota Revised, June 26, 2024. Under both the solar energy system and the wind energy system ordinances, a statement made to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Pennington County citizens. Both of the staff reports have tables of 7 criteria that the Planning Commission may consider in their review of conditional use permits, and they are on the screen. Although staff concluded there were no negative impacts in the following 7 criteria, many local residents would not agree. The following is a rebuttal of the no negative impacts found on the staff reports. Criteria 1, will the established maintenance or operation of the conditional use permit be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare? Evaluation for the criteria for public health, safety, or general welfare does not seem to have given any consideration to the issues of noise generation, both audible and infrasound, or potential impacts of fires. Again, there appears to be only a half-mile zone of consideration for any impacts, and I don't know where that figure came from, but certainly not adequate to protect anyone from the infrasound generated by wind turbines. Recent scientific studies in the US and Europe have shown detrimental effects on humans up to 20 kilometers or 12 miles. The generation of infrasound peaks when turbine blades pass the tower, but they're generated anytime the blades are moving. Sounds change from high to low and back, and the more efficient or bigger the rotor, the more infrasound it produces. Depending on the source of the infrasound, it has been written in articles found on the scientific.gov websites that infrasound can travel in excess of 100 miles. Infrasound is a mechanical vibration. It is sensed by the inner ear, and it is not audible. Audible refers to things that can be perceived and often used in the context of distinguishing sounds or noises that are within the normal human range of hearing. Infrasound affects people differently. There are documented negative impacts on the human heart muscle. Exposure to high levels of infrasound interferes with cardiac muscles contracting ability as early as 1 hour after exposure. There are numerous additional studies which support this conclusion. The results should be taken into account when considering environmental regulations too. The liver and lungs may be impacted by the low frequencies cause the diaphragm to vibrate. And it's not just the lungs. The entire mass of internal organs in the abdomen may move up and down towards and away from the lungs. Other parts of the body that can resonate include the eyes and the brain. Infrasound can cause sleep deprivation, insomnia, dizziness, confusion, and stress. Studies recently conducted in Green Bay, Wisconsin, resulted in the Public Health Service declaring wind turbines to be hazardous to human health because of the infrasound being generated. Scientific data to support the existence of adverse impacts from infrasound grows every year. Recently, 2 counties in Iowa, Clark and Washington, placed or extended moratoriums on wind turbines. A lawsuit was filed in the district court to stop any more turbines, stating in part that the noise it produces will violate ordinances and constitute a private nuisance. Further, it prevents residents from using and enjoying their properties and impact the health and comfort by creating an infrasound nuisance. Turbine fires. Although perhaps not as frequent a concern in the prairie grassland, there is less of a problem around green farmlands, but when the crops dry out, the problem is similar to those in the grasslands. From December 23 through July 24, more than 24 turbine fires have been documented. In Iowa, a farmer with only 2 wind turbines on his land has had 3 fires this year alone. Some were the result of lightning strikes and some from mechanical failures within the hub. Having an integrated lightning protection system is no more guarantee of stopping a fire than having lightning rods in height. The height of the hubs and blades render local firefighting equipment nearly useless until the fire spreads to the ground, putting adjacent landowners' property in danger. Wind turbines in Meade County have also been documented as causing interference with the Doppler radar at New Underwood. The proposed wind turbines will be much closer and will cause even more interference. Doppler radar is an important link for local weather forecasts and predicting severe and dangerous weather. Potential impact on the safety of local residents cannot be overlooked. We don't know yet what the cumulative effect will be from adding more turbines in this area. How much is too much? Solar panels, as someone else mentioned, increase air temperature above and below them, drying out grasses even more than they normally are. In September of this year, Oregon firefighters responded to a second fire at one facility. Both fires were caused by overheated electronic panels that failed and subsequently dropped molten electronics onto dried grass. Consultants are trying to determine what the cause is, but in the meantime, the solar panels cannot be fully degenerized. If the sun is shining, electricity is being produced in the panels. There's no off switch. So the potential for additional fires there continues. Criteria 2, will the establishment, maintenance, or operation of a conditional use permit in any foreseeable manner substantially impair or diminish the use, value, or enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood for the purpose already permitted? Since the issue of potential impacts on livestock has not been fully studied, it is not known what distance they may be at risk. Studies in Wyoming indicate Wyoming are avoiding the area around turbines for some reason, long after they go into operation. Impacts on migration routes generally result in increased animal fatalities. There are reports from Wyoming and Meade County, South Dakota, of deformed horses and cattle after wind turbines were put into operation there. A stud farm in Texas was able to prove damages in court. Their foals got turbine foot after a wind turbine farm came online in the perimeter of the horse farm, and all other possible contaminations were ruled out. In Lisbon, Portugal, a similar horse farm found turbine foot in every foal born after the wind turbine farm went online. They imported non-related foals from an unaffected area, and those foals developed turbine foot. It's not a pretty thing to see, and some animals have had partial recovery when removed from the area, but condition frequently requires euthanasia as affected animals for humane reasons. Evidence is growing that this is not a minor issue and can be a financial calamity for livestock owners. More information and photos are included at the end of this document. If landowners cannot use their adjacent land for grazing cattle or horses, that is definitely an impairment on them. Studies on poultry farms near wind turbines have found that chickens are dying from lack of sleep because of the previously mentioned infrasound keeps them awake day and night. And other animals have been found to become more aggressive because of lack of sleep. Anyone along Baseline Road and parts of Highway 40 that ever want to sell their homes or property will likely find reluctant buyers because of the open prairie view would include solar panels or wind turbines. How many people buying rural land really want to see an industrial site every day? Generally, people move to the country to get away from that. People on Kubi Table to the south will also have a constant view of the turbines, if not the solar panel. I think the land value issue was perhaps partially addressed, but landowners still are concerned that they don't know the true picture for their land values. Criteria 3, will the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for use in the permitted district? And that will depend on several things, including the chosen route of the connecting the two projects to the power grid, what the landowners are currently using their land for along the route of the line or plan to use it for in the future could be disrupted by either route. Opening the door to wind turbine development and more solar panels will be a constant threat to agricultural land use, as stated above, the health of livestock. If land cannot be used to raise cattle, its value is diminished. Criteria 4, are adequate utilities, access road, drainage, or other necessary site improvements provided? This is yet to be seen. Power lines crossing the project site will be used by the wind turbine farm, possibly to operate generators to start the blade rotation. The power line may have to be upgraded to handle additional demand while maintaining service to existing customers on that line. Because electrical demand for the solar and wind farm has not been presented, we can only guess if there will be a detrimental impact on power availability to downline users. If the power line needs to be upgraded, who pays for that? Criteria 5, have adequate measures been or will measures be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion on public streets? I've only encountered trucks hauling wind turbine blades once on a non-divided highway, and it was definitely traffic congestion. There is no way to approach the proposed project sites that will not involve many miles on two-lane highways. Traffic on Highway 40 has increased substantially in the last 10 years, and I can easily see traffic safety issues. Criteria 6, will the conditional use conform to all applicable regulations in the district which it is located? No, it will not, and it cannot. The property is zoned agriculture. The solar and wind turbines do not and cannot conform unless a special exemption is given, such as a special use permit. Again, where does it stop? When do we finally say no more? Criteria 7, is a conditional use consistent with the adopted county comprehensive plan? Well, no. Neither solar panels or wind turbines are appropriate in an agricultural district of open prairie and rolling hills. The county comprehensive plan specifically states when appropriately sited. How can it be appropriate to site 2 industrial projects or even 1 on some of the last remaining short grass prairie in South Dakota? It seems to me that none of the 7 criteria listed in the zoning ordinances have been proven to be met by these projects. Some other issues. The depth of decommissioning work. Someone else brought this up. I think right now it's set at 60 inches. But South Dakota native grasses have roots that extend to 12 to 20 feet below the surface. How can they be reestablished if only the top 5 feet of concrete and rebar are removed? A recent publication by the South Dakota State Universities covers several topics about best management practices for restoring native grassland and sensitive sites resulting from energy or industrial development. Quote, the simplest and most cost-effective way to ensure long-term resilience of grasslands or other sensitive ecosystems is to avoid surface disturbance altogether. They further state a temporary road or corridor that manipulates soil results in permanent ecological impact. It is impossible to completely restore surface and subsurface native systems to pre-disturbance conditions. Landowners are therefore encouraged to consider avoidance as an option. Since the landowner is absentee and has no historical tie or interest in the prairie land, we need to act on his behalf as responsible stewards of these native grasslands. We need to follow the advice of our own state university experts. We need to protect the land. Turbine height is an issue with wildlife, I think, has been addressed again. I still have not seen a definitive number for how high these will be with the blade extended. But there, in addition to previously mentioned issues with turbines, there are a lot of small private planes in the area that fly outside the patterns of the jets commonly used. And red warning lights on the turbine blades are not a guarantee of safety. In August, a small 2-engine plane flying in foggy weather hit a turbine blade, resulting in the death of one person and serious injury to another. And the known danger to birds is widely known. According to Audubon, there are 193 species of birds that live or pass through this area. And bird deaths are widely known, and some areas are extensive. How much are we willing to allow? In 2022, a company called ESI Energy Inc. was sentenced in Cheyenne, Wyoming for violations of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. They agreed to a deal in which they must pay a fine of $118 million to compensate and $6.2 million for damages to at least 136 bald and golden eagles affirmatively determined to have been struck and killed by the turbine blades. They also are required to spend $27 million to protect bald eagles during their probationary period. Again, how many of these majestic birds are we willing to expose to this danger? Noise, again, they're unclear how much actual audible noise will be coming from these, since one of the illustrations, I think PV16, shows a noise reduction operations, noise reduced operations as much as 170 dB to 98 dB. Not familiar enough with wind turbines to know how this relates to the 55 dB limit, but I think it needs to be looked at. And what to me is probably what to the county should be a really big issue is this decommissioning bond. I consider this to be a major issue looking to the future. According to this staff report, calls for a financial surety bond because of the gross decommissioning costs, which was total about $13.5 million. I believe it would be prudent for the county to assess at a minimum a 25% add-on to cover the added costs the county would have to cover if the site is not restored by Eurotech or its successor. Government organizations have additional costs above what a private company would have because of the additional regulations with which they must comply. Add items such as conduct administration, developments of statement of work, bid reviews, bid administration, hiring consultants familiar with this work to help develop the work would only be a few of the things they have to cover. I have worked on the development of several government-initiated contracts, and it is not a straightforward process. The repercussions of inadequate decommissioning bonds is well known in western South Dakota. I should only need to say Gelt Edge to remind you what happens when bonding is not adequate to cover reasonably expected costs, let alone unforeseen costs. A $1 million bond was set by the state of South Dakota for a site cleanup for the Gelt Edge. The real cost to date has reached at least $120 million. Thankfully for the state, it was at some point relieved of the site cleanup by the EPA. Now, a solar and wind farm facility would reasonably never become a Superfund site but the financial implications are there. A large, responsible company walked away when it became clear it was cheaper to declare bankruptcy, forfeit the ridiculously small bond, and walk away rather than take responsibility for what they promised to do upon closure of the project. That was just a good business decision for them. Had nothing to do with what was right. 12 major solar companies have declared bankruptcy on U.S. project as of July 24. Pennington County needs to protect itself and the taxpayers. I know there are a lot of ifs and could-bes and what-ifs, but it only takes one bad thing to occur to ruin many people's lives or futures. In summary, I just want to revisit the 4 major concerns expressed by the 300-plus residents of eastern Custer County. Environmental impacts. Proposed projects threatens to disrupt the natural prairie ecosystem, a cornerstone of our agricultural heritage for generations. Introducing large-scale solar and wind farms could have a long-term detrimental effect on local wildlife, soil health, and water. Preservation of rural lifestyle. Our community values its rural character and agricultural way of life. The proposed project would significantly alter the landscape, losing open, unspoiled spaces that define our area. 3, impact on local agriculture. The proposed installation could interfere with existing agriculture operations, including ranching and farming. The construction and maintenance of these energy systems may lead to soil compaction, changes in water drainage patterns, and potential conflicts with livestock management practices. Number 4, potential for industrialization. There is a risk that approving one project would lead to further industrialization in rural areas, gradually eroding the rural character and autonomy of our rural communities' value. There is precedence rejecting both of these projects. As of September 22nd, 2024, in the United States, 735 proposed wind and solar projects have been outright rejected or severely restricted. This year alone, there have been 58, including a recent denial to issue a conditional use permit in Center, Nebraska. It can be done here too. Either those so-called green renewable energies are reliable and predictable and do not substantially contribute to the electrical generating capacity required to keep the United States up and running. The winter power disaster in Texas clearly pointed that out. Do not let the anthropogenic global warming concept propaganda of the IPCC consensus fraction stampede you into a decision based on potentially inaccurate data assumptions and prediction based on incorrect computer models. In closing, please give careful consideration to the long-term implications of approving even a single additional solar or wind turbine facility on the lives of the people in eastern Pennington County. Families and others have worked on these lands for generations in the maintenance of native prairies to the best of their abilities and hope to be able to pass on this legacy to future generations. Please carefully consider the concerns of over 300 Pennington County residents in this project area. Do not approve this special use permit. Just because you can does not mean you should. Having approved one solar facility does not mean you have to approve another. Thank you for your time.
Questions from the commission? Thank you. Deb Hadcock.
Wow, this is weird on the other side. Just a couple of things. Number one, I helped write this ordinance, so I'll be up straight. Looks like we need some more work on it based on fact-based information today and some of the concerns of the surrounding areas. When you make ordinances, it doesn't mean it can't have amendment or changes, because we find out that the citizens and what they're saying, which I believe today we had a lot of fact-based information. This wasn't just not in my backyard, and that's why I came today. That's also why I believe the ordinance needs more work. I'm also concerned about a decommissioning program with an LLC. When you have an LLC and you decommission, or you decide you don't want the LLC anymore, you drop it. So you put your companies, I have companies in LLCs because I have different companies in case something happens to one of my companies, it bankrupts or does something if you don't know how a LLC works. So that's a big concern. Because where does it go from there if they decide they don't want that LLC? Who gets stuck with that? Number two, the environment, the everlasting effects. I'm not an ag person, but listening to the ag people and how those effects make and do on our environment are huge. Then I started looking at the internet, and 3.6 of the nation's energy is green. It's not very much. We made this ordinance because we had to. Because it was something that if it came, we had nothing on the books. So it wasn't because we loved green energy, it's because we had to have something on the books. We've had one that came through, it was a local company. Basin Electric did some of that. They went through the process. Now we have an out-of-state company under an LLC. For me, the people's voice does matter. It matters when fact-based information is given, and it's a big concern, and it's real concerns. It's real concerns for the people out there in New Underwood. The other issue is the tax credits. How much credits do you get for state and county compared to what you get for tax credits? I didn't know that at the time. I didn't look at tax credits when I was making and helping with an ordinance. They last for about 10 years. I'm in Pennington County Housing Authority, and after 10 years, what happens to those credits? When the credits go away, so does the taking care of the projects. So what they brought to you today as citizens are true concerns, and what they said on how to shut down or say no are true concerns. They're not something that they made up. They use the criteria, and I agree with their criteria today. Like I said, I was on the Planning Commission the first time. The trust in a company is by how they present and do their information. I saw 2 of the presentations by this company and I didn't have the trust in this company to follow through and where they were going and what they were going to do. And then looking at being an LLC, that kind of made that trust a little bit less again. At this point in time, again, in the future, I think we're gonna, as commissioners, or at least one commissioner for sure, and one had told you, we're gonna look into the future of what this means. Because also the landscape, if you look at California and a lot of the states that they talked about, they don't want landscapes with, it's called Wild Springs, the project out there, 347,000 panels. If this project is made and then gets to expand, how many panels is that going to be? And where do we stop? Where do we make tourism and ag our #1 industry in South Dakota? Is that what we want to see in the landscapes? Never thought about that. Didn't go to California, didn't look at some of those landscapes. Didn't understand the liability, again, on what that land wants returned to, and who does that go to once that LLC drops, or once that land is returned to who? And the owner, of course, that speaks for itself. So bottom line, I think it needs more work. I know at this point, this has to have an answer. But moving forward, I think we need to do more of a moratorium or something to move forward and figure out some of these concerns and real concerns of the citizens of eastern South Dakota, or eastern Pennington County, and basically in our whole area of the state. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I got a question, Deb.
Charlie?
I don't mean to be rude, but are you speaking as a commissioner or a private citizen?
Private citizen today, and then for the future of looking at the ordinance as a commissioner.
I just wanted it on the record.
Okay,
Thank
thank you, sir.
Are there any other speakers?
Hi, I'm Veronica Edoff, and I live about 12 miles south of this area. Everybody's, my biggest concern is the condition of that land that's going to be destroyed and the livelihood of the people and their businesses around there that are South Dakota citizens. And before you make a vote at all today, since that name on that permit has been called into question, I think you guys better make sure that that name is correct on that permit before you make any kind of a decision, since it's been called in connection. And I'm asking you to vote no on both accounts, especially because of the environmental impact to that land and those people around it and us. I can hear traffic on Highway 44, and I'm 12 miles away to the south at times. So those people that are living closer, it's easy for you guys to sit here. You're not going to be half a mile from there living there, but there are folks that are there that are citizens that live right here in South Dakota, and will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. So I'm asking you to vote no and check that signature out.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions?
Can I ask a question that we have Brittany come back up? And I want to ask her a question. The most referred to items by all the speakers, the testifiers, were in regards to our comprehensive plan, zoning, and then the 7 review criteria. Can you give us a little insight? Meaning, for instance, I'll try to start you off on the answer I'm looking for. If we didn't have zoning, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. Is that correct? The commissioners might, but we wouldn't, planning.
Typically, if you don't have zoning, it would be at a building permit instead of zoning. If you
Correct.
don't have building permits, there wouldn't be
If we didn't have
anything.
building permits, then we wouldn't. The next thing, comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan is formulated, established by the state. They actually have the guidelines set up on what needs to be done, and that comprehensive plan has to be in place for zoning. Is that correct?
Correct, and a comprehensive plan is a guide, and it gets updated, and we are in the process of updating our comprehensive plan. Just because of a lot of the change that's happened in our community over the last 5 years, our comprehensive plan is not reflecting that at this time.
How many times have we had it revised since Pennington County's had zoning?
We typically have comprehensive plan amendments that come in front of the board, the planning commission and the board, and it does get changed.
The whole, how many times have been reviewed then?
I can't answer
know.
that, but we have several applications.
More than once since
Oh, absolutely.
79 or 75?
Well, our ordinances were effective 1994, February 28th, 1994. because there
94.
was- Correct.
The last thing, where does the 7 criteria come from? Is that something that's established by our Board of Commissioners or the Planning Commission or
It's
what?
actually in our ordinance, under Section 510 of our conditional use permit process. So part of the reason, and Mr. Durr brought this up, is part of this process. If it was an administrative process and they checked all the boxes and there wasn't any evidence to be refuted in a hearing, then we wouldn't have a hearing. And that's the point of these hearings, is to bring additional information that this board can consider in their decision. So that is the reason for a hearing versus having an administrative review, is that so this commission can take in all of the information, the basic check boxes from our ordinance, and then any additional information that this planning commission can take into consideration from testimony from others to make that decision.
Okay, and then my last question is, a lot of the criteria that are in those 7 represent basically, boy, and I hate to do this, you know how I love litigation, are from litigation backgrounds. Is that, in other words, that's where they came from?
Well, a conditional use, in a sense, is a variance to the types of uses that are typically allowed. So there are some criteria that need to be in place in order for the planning commission to consider it. And in that criteria, those are basic things that we look at, and they're objective in nature. So when you look at these types of uses in areas, are they appropriate, things like that. They're basic criteria. And they're in every, if you look at a conditional use permit process, they're in every conditional use permit.
Correct. But I guess what I was looking for is a lot of what we see is their application of those questions are basically either where XYZ County followed what was in their plan and followed the question, or some court decided that you did or didn't.
I don't know
Follow me?
about the court deciding, but.
In other words,
but there's-
that's a good basis of the 7. It didn't just materialize out of the comprehensive plan or our good thinking. It came from somewhere.
Right, and it comes from our ordinance, and that ordinance, it is something so you can look at and consider whether that use is appropriate. The other thing to consider is in every conditional use permit, there's always conditions. So just because it's approved doesn't mean they just get to do. They still have to meet all of those conditions that staff recommends and any other ones that the planning commission want to impose.
I guess I was thinking that it came more from the state direction than just materialized in our ordinance. Do other counties have similar type of 7 lists?
I can't answer that off the top of my head, but I would venture to guess yes, just like our variances have criteria in order to grant one.
Okay. I'm just saying, I think the 7 came from the state. I
I
don't
will
think
look
it's
that
something
up.
we western South Dakotas and people just put in our ordinance. I think it came from somewhere. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I ask Brittany a question too?
Okay.
Brittany, I think back in 2017 when Ordinance 317 was adopted, you were a staff member then.
Correct.
Could you, I think I was on the commission then too, and I don't have my notes from 2017 in front of me, but would you be able to just summarize what was considered and, when that ordinance was established?
Sure, there was actually a committee that was formed, and they met for several months. And that committee had, I believe I was not on that committee. It was the previous planning director and another staff member that was actually on that committee. But there was a group of individuals, a commissioner, representatives from other corporations like Black Hills Corp. And West River Electric, I believe, and that's where they had come up with the ordinance. But it came from a committee, as Commissioner Hadcock had indicated.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jerry?
Comment. So, and I'm just a couple follow-ups on your comments. And so one, a comprehensive plan, there are counties that have a comprehensive plan that don't have zoning. And so it's not like zoning requires a comprehensive plan, and that was kind of my interpretation. And secondly, when you're writing an ordinance, I've been involved in many, typically, depending on what the situation is, you have to look at what the state is doing when you're writing some of these ordinances, if there's cross-language or crosstalk on some statutory requirements. But when you write an ordinance, or when you draft this, it's to come from the local level. And so it's with input, and I know when you have a comprehensive plan and you have meetings, or you have a 5-year plan in the highway department, and you hold these public meetings, not many people attend because they really don't, those meetings have low attendance unless it's something like the state did when they said we're going to have a discussion on closing the overpasses between, Box Elder and the county line. So when you write an ordinance, you look at that, but it's not to, let me write an ordinance that says that I'm going to meet the test so I can never get sued. These are not legal guidelines. They should be inputs coming from the community. And really what you're hearing today is, and, Brittany said it and did it quite well, that, these are guidelines that you've established to give you the point to have this hearing. And so you have these 7 boxes checked or unchecked, yes or no, but then you take public input on these, and if you wouldn't, public input, just like I said before, if the planning department could go through and approve this, there wouldn't be this process. But the ordinance and stuff that we have in place says that you will take public input, and you're hearing from the people that are impacted by this, that they don't agree with some of the checks on the boxes, and that's why we have this process. And it goes back to the fact that I think you've heard other information coming from the people impacted in this area that are saying, we don't agree with this, and that's their right to have this public input. It also puts the responsibility back on you, because I keep hearing, and I've heard this for years, from people in these, decision-making abilities that, well, I had to vote this way because, we could have opened ourselves up to liability. We have to do this because, the state obviously permits these, and so, we have an obligation to do it as well. You don't. I'm telling you, based on the testimony you've heard before you today from the public and the people impacted, hearing what came from the planning department, hearing Yarrowtech, and hearing the people in this room, everybody gave information. And I think the information that has come forward that says it doesn't comply with our comprehensive plan and it changes the use in an agricultural district. Therefore, we would ask you to vote no.
Thank you.
Can I ask Jerry? I've been around this planning stuff for 20 years now, and one function or other serving on committees or the commission here. And I've always learned that based on the history of zoning and comprehensive plans, that yes, you can have a comprehensive plan and not have zoning, but you can't have zoning without a comprehensive plan. And one of the items that I remember having been pointed out was Pennington County once got their zoning entirely thrown out. I believe it was 1979, it was written in 1975, because of the comprehensive plan was inadequate to function with the zoning that they had. It was thrown out in court, and I knew that. The other thing was, and what I was trying to point out, Brittany, and she danced around really well because she's the planning director, and she should, she does a good job of that, was most of these 7 criteria, as I understand it, and this is my second go-around on this, have come from legitimate litigation-type decisions by a court. In other words, these items have been contested numerous times across the state in a court in regards to zoning. That was the only item, and that's where I think it comes out. And how much strength they go from opinion, which is some element of any testimony isn't all fact. And how much is weighted by fact, I don't know.
All right. So I just have a comment on that one.
Sure.
Whenever, I was involved in drafting an ordinance and going through this process, we did not research court litigation. We took in from the public. And as an example, I was working in Meade County at the time, and zoning came up years ago, and we took the ordinance and amended it when we attempted zoning to meet what the public brought forward. And we did not do a lot of research on case law. I can't think of an ordinance that I've been involved in. You would look at the statute and stuff, but, even our legal team did not go out and research case law to see, are you writing an ordinance, that basically says, I've complied with every court decision coming out, let's review Supreme Court cases, and therefore we've got a good ordinance because we're not open to civil liability. I don't think that's the approach you take when you write an ordinance. And getting back to a comprehensive plan without zoning, this is why I think a comprehensive plan is so important, and there is case law about a comprehensive plan. And so it was a decision in Meade County years ago to improve a section line road. The name was Fort Meade Way. And so that caused a lot of issues in the county. The commission's vote to improve that section line got referred to a vote, and it was defeated. And so really what they did is they defeated the funding mechanism for it. And so the commission decided they were going to move ahead with the road. We're not going to do a paved road, we're going to put in a gravel road. And so papers got dropped again, and Meade County got sued. Going back to the Meade County's comprehensive plan, in the comprehensive plan, when it was adopted years before the improvement of the section line, that actual section line was in the comprehensive plan, showing that it, in the future road use or use within the county, that was going to be potentially developed and opened up. And it was because it was in the comprehensive plan that the civil action to stop that didn't pursue. And so when you have individuals in the room, and I'm one of them pointing out the county's comprehensive plan, and I'm pointing out site location, others are pointing out in the comprehensive plan about use in an agricultural district, of bringing this in, even though the zoning allows for a conditional use permit. We're saying that this conditional use permit, if you look at the overall scope of the comprehensive plan, and that's kind of one of the things getting back to is when you're writing an ordinance and you're putting together a permitting process, a building permit and ordinance, and I can tell you a lot of times there is a disconnect between reading the entirety of the comprehensive plan. Does this permitting process and/or this ordinance, does it all fit together? And everything goes back to the county's comprehensive plan. And so just based on the comprehensive plan, I would say that you have enough information that's been given to you today that says, even though these boxes are checked, we're saying it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan. So, thanks.
Commissioners, any more discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, for the audience to understand, I'm on the county commission. We rotate on the planning commission. So that's why at every meeting you should have a county commissioner here. But it's a rotation basis, so it's one of the 5 of us during the course of the year that are sitting on the planning commission. I have visited the site. I was out there just last week, and I was very impressed with what's been, the plans that have been put together for this project. That's not to say that I support the project. In fact, I plan on voting no on the motion that's on the table at the present time. And there's a number of things that I've taken into consideration. First of all, even though I represent a district that doesn't include this particular area, I do consider myself as representing the entire county. And so when I have residents come in and are opposed, I have to look at that. Quite frankly, except from the applicants, I've not had anybody indicate that they would encourage my support for this. Now, at the same time, many of those probably don't realize that I'm sitting on the planning commission either. But I would think they would have come forward if they were in support of the project, strictly from the standpoint that they know that if it's approved here, it still comes through the Board of Commissioners. And so for other reasons also, and one of those being is I was very impressed with the young people that came forward today. So I've worked with some of these people. I've worked with Justin Uhrig on other projects, but I know that he's very interested in the ranch life. I got to visit with Seth Sorb the other day while we was visiting on the project. And one of his concerns that he brought up today was that how does this impact his dams that are feeding his livestock? Could there be an impact there? I don't have that answer, but nobody else has been able to give me that answer either at this point in time. And so I know that in putting down the wells in that particular area of the country, it's extremely expensive to do. And I don't think Seth has one of those deep wells that feeds his property. Lindsay Mader, I know that from previous discussions that her plan is to remain here and that she wants to be the next generation on that ranch. And I hear today from her dad that those plans are evolving. So I'm really impressed with that, and I like the idea that you keep property like this in ag production. in addition. So those are going to be my reasons for voting against this proposal today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I address some of those, please? Some things you raised?
Yes.
Thanks. So some of you may remember me. I've been here before. My name is Lyon Roth. I'm the chair of Aerotech. And Commissioner Drews, I respect your perspective. And Commissioner Hadcock, I mean, she spoke as Deb today, but she was sitting in your role the last time we were here in September. And she strongly encouraged us to do a site tour because she thought that it would be helpful for you and your colleagues to put in perspective exactly where we are and what we're doing. And I heard a lot of things. I'm certainly not going to try to debunk all the various points that were raised, but we have essentially followed your roadmap, in our opinion, very faithfully. You talk about who's going to lobby you. There are two adjacent landowners that we've tried to engage with variable success. I'm very empathetic to the fact that Jerry's daughter wants to come and move. You have, I think I heard you say you have 11,000 acres that you own through a deed, and there's some other stuff that you lease. You were kind of skeptical as why we would want to lease some land, but obviously the economics were in your favor. I'm not saying why are you pointing a finger at us if you're also renting land. You have a lot of land, and as a neighbor, we'd love to have you close by. But so much misinformation was spoken at this podium today, and I wondered what kind of an impact it should have. I'm just going to debunk some of the headlines, and I think this was mentioned, Brittany said this, a conditional use permit is just a green light to do all the other things that need to be done. Most of the heavy lifting is still way ahead, including migratory bird patterns, including any stormwater or drainage or other interferences with people's right to enjoy their property. But from a property right perspective, and the whole LLC thing, I mean, with respect, Deb, yes, we are an LLC, but the decommissioning bond is backed by an insurance company. So, and the fact that 12 solar companies declared bankruptcy, I mean, there's thousands of solar companies. And the fact that 75 wind projects or wind and solar projects were rejected, lots of projects should be rejected because they don't meet the criteria that they were supposed to meet. Maybe this one gets rejected too, at the interconnection level, at the environmental level, at the, at the injection level. There's still many milestones that this project has to pass. But it is, as best as possible, selected, the location, the composition was selected specifically so it wouldn't be an eyesore from Highway 44 or from Interstate 90. It was selected specifically so that it would not interfere with the two neighbors, and we only have two neighbors, right, if it's not exactly a perfect square, but the two families that you mentioned. And it's our intention to be good neighbors to them and good neighbors to New Underwood, and we had a town hall meeting. This idea, again, that Deb brought up, that you get your tax credits for 10 years and then you disappear. The tax credits last for 7 years. Housing is extremely different than a renewable energy. As Mark said, I mean, I don't speak for landlords in the housing world. That's not my world. But in the renewable energy world, you get paid for what you generate. So if your panels have degraded, if your turbines aren't working as well, you replace them. And that happens all the time, which, to Lori's question, cuts to how long these things can last. Now, there has been quite a bit of improvement, technological improvement, and we anticipate that will continue. But what I have heard is that aesthetically, people don't like it. This idea that it harms livestock, this idea that it's, all these other rumors that it poisons the water, that it makes noise, all these things have been explored at length. If what you've seen, and you were on the visit, if the visuals from 3.5 miles and from 11 miles, and Justin saw a guy taking a picture of a bird with lots of colors in the background, those things I don't see as well as I used to, but I've seen the presentation up close in front. Those are practically invisible. I challenge, if you're going to have any renewable energy project anywhere that has less of a visual interference, either on the solar or the wind side, I can't imagine one. I mean, this is really so far away from where anybody else can see, and the fact that some inaudible sound waves can travel great distances and thus wreak havoc on the lives of of livestock and destroy, I've heard the word destroy and change the way people have been living their lives here for 1886. I mean, I can't interfere, obviously, with your decision, any of your decisions on how you plan to vote, but I think that it's critical that the facts be there. And you've been in business and you've been in public service for long enough to know that you are always going to get, in instances like this, a much more vociferous response from people who are agitated by the prospect of having a little bit of a change in their community, rather than people who don't live as close or aren't as aware and don't feel at all impacted and essentially trust you and your colleagues on the commission. And when you put together an ordinance and you're extremely clear in terms of what needs to be done, which I's need to be dotted, which T's need to be crossed, and you're encouraging companies like our colleagues who put together that solar farm and like us to invest the money, the resources, and dedication to a community faithful to those criteria, there might be reasons for disapproving it. And some of those reasons would not be complying with what's in the ordinance. But if it's an aesthetic feeling and you just get enough people to shout down an important idea that complies with something that the county itself thought would be helpful for the county, and the 400,000+, probably closer to $500,000 a year in demonstrable additional tax revenue for every one of those 30, 35, or 40 years, I would really come back to the criteria that you identified, the facts. I think the facts here are highly compelling in order to support the proposal, and pretty much everything I heard is either, unsubstantiated rumor, not even science, and a whole lot of noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes. Question for me?
Yes.
Okay.
You said the view, I'm Betty Kineski, as you know, and if you were there, you could see my house from where their site is, and you said it's not gonna bother but 2 neighbors. I'm the closest neighbor other than Buzzy Johnson, so you think that's not gonna affect my lifestyle? You don't have cows, so you're not worried about what's gonna happen to the cows, do you?
So neither one of us can speak on behalf of the cows, with respect. With respect to with respect to whether the cows will be bothered, the cows will be bothered by the views, I don't know. I don't know what cows.
Well, I've been around cattle all my life. We've been generations of people here, and you want to come from out of state and destroy our way of life, as far as.
But you're using such a strong word, Ms. Konofsky. I mean, what I'm saying is,
No, you don't live here. I live here. I've lived here all my life. My parents did, my grandparents did, my grandparents.
So I will admit, honestly, I will admit that you will see a slightly different view when this is up and running and built than you saw, before. I'll acknowledge that if that's important to you. And then I guess I want to be very empathetic to you and your family and the sight lines that come from your house. But, and frankly, I'll make a representation right now that if we do move forward and there's, certain adjustments that can be made or certain extra, things that we can do to ameliorate that, that's helpful. But next to that, there's $500,000 of additional tax revenue to everybody else in the county
All right, wait.
Oh, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay.
I just want my point that my house is close to this project.
And you will see something you did not see before. I admit that, yes.
I've seen something here that I never wanted to see again either, but that's a side point. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we're going to limit discussion to the board. Right now, we have a motion on the floor. Motion was made by Litson and seconded by Johnson to approve conditional use permit COCU 24-0022 with 28 conditions. How does the commission wish to proceed?
Madam Chair, I'd like to have Brittany come up. Just want you to answer the end of this sentence. The planning department is recommending approval of this conditional use permit because you've answered a lot of it, but the Reader's Digest of why that recommendation is coming.
Sure, because when we go through our ordinance requirements, like what I had spoke earlier about the administrative review, it met the requirements of our ordinance.
Okay,
With the 28 conditions. So if they meet the 28 conditions, so in order for them, so this would be, allow them to start the project, they would still have to meet all 28 conditions. They would still have to meet all their state and federal requirements as well. By the time, before they could actually get a building permit to actually put something above ground.
I'm not saying one way or the other that I support it or don't support it. I come from a farm. I understand all the things that come with farmland, and I also understand that it's a changing world and different things. I don't think that we as non-elected members should not give the commission an opportunity to review this. They're going to have a closer contact, I believe, than we typically have on this commission. I'm going to support this conditional use just because I believe the elected officials need to review it and experience all of the additional input that they get that we don't get.
Well, this conditional use permit will not go on. This is the final decision. If this decision is appealed, it would go to court, to circuit court, not to the commission.
No, okay, I was thinking that this would move on to the
No,
commission.
this conditional use permit, this decision of this planning commission is the decision.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I get a feeling we're all going to give her a little bit of input before we could do this vote, so we might as well. I'm a great believer in property rights, but that property rights have to do with that your neighbor may not agree with what your property rights picture is. It's that simple. And that's why we've got Pennington County decided to limit them with zoning. And we up here, and certainly the Board of Commissioners has the same duty, but this time they're not involved in it. We've got an obligation to support what those zoning and comprehensive plans say. In this case, I listened to a lot of testimony and we talked about grasslands, and that's why Zeth and I talked down there a little bit. And Zeth and I think we understood each other, and he actually informed me somewhat and brought me up to speed a little bit more. Grasslands is a developed sort of thing. It's not untouched earth. You guys have developed it, and it takes 10, 15 years to get the grassland the way you want it. And you didn't do that by standing there watching it or putting up with Mother Nature and the different items you're handed every year. So the idea that we're listening to South Dakota State University saying the best grasslands, that it's never been touched, I don't think that's true according to what I listen to here. So, and then the existing ordinances are just that. They're existing. This is what we've got to deal with today. And we all made an obligation. We said we support those. Kevin just referred to that in his short deal because they exist today. But I've got to be honest with you. That doesn't make me totally in support of this. The very thing I started out, and Deb pointed to it, this came up, what, a month and a half ago when we first looked at it. The decommissioning plan, I think, is grossly underfunded, and we are at one of the first steps in this. And if the grasslands are important, that decommissioning plan is extremely important to you guys as neighbors. So that's where I'm coming from right now. I think the Aerotech is done with what we've got to deal with in the way of ordinances and where we're at in the procedure. They just pointed out again, they are at a stepping stone. You saw the dates involved. They've got quite a bit of work to do yet before they get this on the ground. I think they've adequately addressed our ordinances the way they exist today. Now, is whether or not Jerry and I agree about the comprehensive plan and what that really means or doesn't mean. There's going to be a lot of scientists and litigation people that I sure don't like to deal with that are going to tell us more about that. But the decommissioning plan, I think, is underfunded. So that's where I'm coming from right now. It's short. And I'd have to tell you that. I brought it up in the first place. I think your outfit that did your decommissioning plan must have grown up in Chicago alongside of me before I got here to South Dakota, because they've got a totally non-consistent financial idea of what you're going to experience when you decommission that plant.
It's updated every 5 years.
Well, I know, but we gotta improve this right now, and we also have to send it back. I'm a little worried to send it back saying that it's approved, and then I give it to the planning department when they issue your permit. You know, that's where it's all gonna be based, and you guys are gonna issue your bond or deal with your bond company. I don't wanna give people false ideas. I don't wanna give a bond company a false idea. This is a sneak through. And I still think you're way short, and I don't know how you're gonna predict the future with that stuff. I think electronic equipment, the future of electronic equipment, your phone, your computers at home, just even your furnace, everything's got computer, your cars. That situation's changing every day. I'll bet you every one of us are spending more on our car right now to address computers. Every time you take it in, to even, and I don't mean to be really simple here, go get your tires changed and see how much they charge you to reset your computers that the government ordered for your safety so the tire pressures are maintained. $50 is the minimum to reset the computer. So I think this whole thing has got to be looked at, I guess, from reasonable minds. So far, I think you guys' presentation is reasonable, but I think your outfit that looked at your decommissioning, I don't think they struck it with me anyway. I think they missed it.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
One more from Brittany. Since I had the misunderstanding of where this was moving, what parts of the studies, I know that there's a list this long of environmental, of historic, of grasslands, that do any of those come back to us, or you deal with all that in the office?
We deal with that in the office. They did a preliminary, and it's in your packet, transect report of things that they'll have to look at during that process. So they still have to look at SHPO, which is the historical preservation. There's still a question of the PUC permitting requirement, if with a combined, since it's over 100, if it's going to be required, things like that. So if it goes into those permitting processes, like they had said about the state, then there's going to be additional requirements through that agency.
Including another look at the decommissioning book.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Michael.
A few years ago, before I became a member of this commission, I found myself sitting out where you folks are. It seemed that somebody up the road from us in Hill City wanted to put a vacation home rental. So all the neighbors got up in arms, just like you are, for good reason. And we came in and we talked about the parties that they were going to have at the vacation home rentals and the Harleys and the UTVs and all this stuff. When it was done, the vacation home rental was approved. Now, my way of thinking back then, this was wrong because the whole audience out here at that time was against it. How could you do that? The point of law, which now that I'm on the committee, I understand. I agree with you. I don't like wind turbines. I was out there. The grasslands are beautiful. But by the same token, these guys have jumped through the hoops that they were supposed to. And I guess the way I have to look at it, even though I don't particularly like it, I think I have to vote for it just because I was on that side and I learned a really important lesson on that. So at this point, I'm going to vote for it just to get things going. That's my opinion.
Roll call vote.
You have conditions on your ordinance, and you can change those conditions by the distance in which You put the solar panels and the turbines, right? You also can change.
Setbacks, yes.
Right. So some of those conditions on your decommissioning can be higher. So you don't have to vote what's on the book for the ordinance, or what you do is change it by conditions. So a lot of the states or the counties changed it by how far they put the distance to put that many panels or to put that many turbines in those areas. Thank you.
And the landowners in question.
Excuse me, point of order, you have to come up to the,
And the valid application with the landowner is in question.
I have
have
a,
to, I hate to say, you gotta say your name
Lindsay
again.
Mader.
Thank you.
I guess I looked at the conditional use permit application, and it has a signature on it, I guess.
That's not his name.
Adam Henry?
So, they made a typo by leaving out an R.
Point of order.
Sorry. Mark Tippett, there's a typo of a missing R, but it was the valid landowner who presented himself before the notary. So the landowner of the land is the one who signed the application, and his signature indicating that his signature is from him is those were accurate.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if it is notarized, I believe the state of South Dakota requires the notary now to see that they attach ID, proper ID, and different things that didn't used to exist before they can sign that anyway. So it's the notary in question. If there's a clerical error, it's the only one we can question is the notary.
Go ahead, roll call vote.
Charlie,
I'm gonna vote nay.
Gary,
Nay.
Lori,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Passes 4-2.
Okay, we're going to move on to conditional use, item number 11, conditional use permit, COCU 24-0023.
I'd like to make a motion to approve COCU 24-0023 with 26 conditions.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve COCU 24-0023. Discussion? Okay. Roll call vote.
Charlie,
Nay.
Gary,
Nay.
Lori,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes. Motion carried.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I have a question for you, Brittany? For Yarrowtech, knowing that the commissioning, the decommissioning amounts could be challenged again, do they, how do they get in place with you? Obviously, the commission has decided my stance on it isn't the accurate one. So what do they do from here forward, please?
This will be reviewed in a year, so those conditions will be up in front of you at that time again.
Do they have to have that in place, so like my thoughts, before they get their building permit?
Yes, they have to
Okay.
have that in place before their building permit, and the PUC information will have to be determined before the building permit. Because there is a condition that they have to meet all state and federal requirements.
And as Mark and I determined when we were talking there, that the amount will be established at that time.
Correct, and as you know, the last condition of every conditional use permit is it can be brought up for review
Sure.
by any planning commissioner or board of commissioner. So if there is concern from this commission about that decommissioning, you can always ask for it to be brought back for that to be addressed.
I think the criteria, I guess I'm going to state it because I was the one that opposed about the decommissioning. Once you establish your criteria for the decommissioning, unless something extraordinary comes up, I think you've got to stay with that pattern for establishing the amount of it.
So in the previous request, the PUC did require decommissioning as well and a bond, so we just shared
Their criteria?
their criteria with them.
Okay.
So if that comes forward and they do have to get a PUC permit, we work with the PUC on that permit because they will have to bond with them as well.
Well, that's what I thought. I don't want them, what I'm saying is I don't think you have to have a new hoop down the road for them to jump through to do it properly. I think once you set the criteria, it should stay that way. Thank you.
Madam
County Board?
Chair,
Yes?
I didn't say much about why I voted yes, and since everybody else did, I guess I should. I voted in favor of this because this is
Lori
just the
Litzen.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say my name, Lori Litzen. It's the very initial step for them to proceed with their project. And there are many, many more studies required, and all of these concerns that were expressed by the people that spoke today will be addressed in detail. But having grown up on a farm that had the high power transmission line and the substation, nobody would argue today that that was not a good thing. And I think this company should have the right to proceed with their project and address all these concerns in detail.
Thank you. That was Commissioner Lori Litzen. All right. County Board report?
Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. The County Board report. The Board of Commissioners will hear Planning Commission's recommendations from their October 16th meeting and this meeting on Wednesday, November 6, 2024.
Items from the public? Items from the staff?
Just a quick update. We had the South Dakota Planners Conference last week. It was a pretty good turnout. There was about 80 individuals, planners from all over the state. One of the biggest topics was vacation home rentals, short-term rentals. So there was quite a bit of discussion. I did find out we are the only county that has any kind of requirements for vacation home rentals in the state of South Dakota. There's quite a few cities, but we are the only county. So.
Okay.
And they're all having problems.
There was a presentation from the city of Lead, and the planner there, she did a remarkable presentation. They have a very similar process to us in a licensure, but she gave a really good presentation, and it's very similar to our process, so.
Items from the membership? Okay, the chair would address a motion to adjourn.
Move. Do it. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carried.
Oh, I have to do roll call.
Thank you.
Charlie, I have to do roll call on the motion.
Oh, you have to do a roll call? Sure.
Yeah.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gary,
These guys did.
Lori,
Oh,
He's gone.
We've got different views,
Mike.
but it's still.
Mike? Roll call?
Yeah, because.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
okay,
Excuse me.
Kevin.
Are you doing fine?